Hello, in this video we're going to cover label settings in display layer settings. And to get to that, you can either double click on the layer in the layer tree, or with that as your selection layer, you can use display layer settings, alt display layer settings, to open the layer settings window. All the label settings are located on the right side in layer settings. So we're just going to go through the more complicated label settings. I'm not going to touch on font and things. I think most people know how to use font. And some of the more obvious options I may not cover. I do encourage you to just kind of come in here and set up a label and just kind of play around with all the different options. All the settings update live. So if you change a color, if you change a position, anything like that, you'll be able to see the label move or change instantly. So let's just jump right into it. And first things first, you can already see that I have my visibility set to automatic. There's three options here, same as setting up layer style settings. You want to put that visibility, almost always you're going to want to set up some sort of automatic visibility. It's pretty crucial with labels, especially on like point features, or any layer where you have thousands of features. If you're showing those at 20,000 feet to an inch, as you zoom out, that is going to slow down the program. That's a lot of work for Atlas to do. To every time you zoom, move, every feature has to be redrawn. The label has to be redrawn, and in most cases that's calculating a centroid or a point on surface and rereading the scale, and it's a lot of work for Atlas to do. So I do encourage you to come in here, set automatic, and just set some number that is good for you. 5,000, 10,000, 2,000 feet is usually a pretty good place to start. So for now, I'm just going to leave this one at 2,000, or maybe I'll just bump that up to 4,000 in case we start moving around. And from is the lowest visibility, 2 is the highest extent visibility. So in most cases you're going to want 0, but you could set this up so you only see the labels between 10,000 and 20,000 feet or something. Like if you just have a county shape or something and you only want to see the labels for that county when you're zoomed really far out. So visibility, those are good tips to have. It's a little bit complicated, so I did want to cover that. And now I want to just go ahead and set some sort of expression for the label. So you have primary and you have secondary. And the way that that works is the primary is going to be the top, and then secondary is going to be line 2. So you can notice that I've just put text in a single quote, and that's how you populate an entire layer with a string value. A numeric value does not require the single quote, but you can see here we've got primary and line 2. So secondary is on line 2. So for now, let's just keep this a little bit simple, and let's just populate this with one of the attribute fields, and we're going to use area. The label expression builder here, this just uses our dev express expression builder, and there is another video for that, so I'm not going to go into too much more detail here, but I do want to just put area in here for now. So now you can see we've got the area, and I'm going to try to set this up so we can do some testing. We'll just use this feature. Zoom in on that. Go back into label settings here, display layer settings. Let's go to the position tab. So probably the most important thing to note here is the label placement method, because this sets the origin point for your label. So all of the orientation offset for that, the multi-line text alignment, label multi-part features, even all of these styles and things where you have offsets, is based off of the placement. So this sets the origin point for where that label should be. So interior point is going to keep that label inside the geometry. Interior point is default, so you're most likely not going to need to change this, though there is a chance that interior point doesn't quite look right in certain circumstances, and you may want to change it to one of the other two options, centroid or center. And I'm going to just show that real quick. Center, I may actually have this. See if I can find it. Turn this to always on so I can find my shape. Okay, here are my example shapes. Let me turn this off. So here's regen, and here's kind of this crescent moon style shape, which can cause issues, and I'm going to show you why right now. Point on surface, you can see that that label shows up right in the middle of that shape. So if I'm using center or centroid, you're going to get a different placement method. So centroid may be a word that you're familiar with, and centroid typically does work. In most cases, centroid would work and would look good because it uses kind of a weighted average of that shape, the entire size of that shape. So it'll kind of move it towards a thicker part in some cases. Like you can see for this unit, the centroid is very obvious, like it's right in the middle. Now in this case, the centroid is here, so it's not even a part of that shape, and in some cases that can cause a problem, even if it's just for printing maps where you want to see it. There are other operations that use centroid, and say you were trying to select this based on the centroid, now the centroid's way out here. So point on surface is used in almost all cases in Atlas because that's the only way to keep a centroid, so to speak, inside of a feature. So that's really how to think of it. The interior point is a centroid, but it's forced to stay inside the geometry. Centroid does not necessarily stay inside the geometry, and center uses the full extent of the geometry. So as you can see here, this wet area, if I copy this wet area, do I have a point? I think so. Oh, it's not on. Sorry. Turn that on. Oh, I already did this. Okay. Turn this freehand layer off. So what you can see here is what I did is I copied wet area, which is what amounts to the full extent of this regen layer. So if you were to draw an extent of this feature, it would look like this this orange box. So that's what I mean when I say extent. It's a box that encapsulates the full feature. So if you use the center for the label of this feature, you're going to get the center point of this extent, which is right here. In some cases, that may be useful labeling grid or parcel in some cases where it's more or less a square. Center may be your best option because the extent of that, you want it to be smack dab in the center of that extent. It can be the best option. Okay, so I'm going to make another video that covers the rest of this. This video is already over 9 minutes, so I'll see you in the next video.